The courtroom held its breath as 12-year-old Zara Wilson stood firm before the scowling judge, her weathered notebook pressed to her chest. Inside were the formulas destined to change the world. Behind her sat Marcus Evans, once a king of Wall Street, now disgraced and discarded, watching with anxious eyes as everything hinged on this moment. Before we dive deeper into this extraordinary tale, let us know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments, hit like, and subscribe to be part of our storytelling family. Let's rewind to discover how a bankrupt financier and a homeless girl defied fate and reshaped the future. Marcus Evans had once seemed unstoppable. At 48, the prominent black venture capitalist had built a $300 million empire, appeared on the covers of Fortune and Forbes, and owned a lavish mansion in Boston's prestigious Beacon Hill. His firm, Evans Capital, was the envy of the financial world, famous for spotting billion-dollar startups before anyone else. But one icy December morning, everything collapsed. Marcus stared in horror at his screen as Evans Capital's stock plunged 97% in just an hour. His white partners, led by Richard Whitman, had orchestrated a flawless betrayal, moving assets, falsifying records, and feeding rumors of fraud that sent Wall Street running by sundown. Marcus was ruined, his reputation shredded, his future gone, and prosecutors circling for crimes he hadn't committed. The months that followed were a blur of disgrace. The mansion was seized. His wife of 15 years, Catherine, left a curt note on the marble countertop. "I married success, not failure." Old colleagues sent him job listings for janitor gigs and security posts. "Maybe this fits your skill set now," read one anonymous message. The media that once praised his brilliance now dissected his fall with venomous glee, veiling racial bias in finance speak. Evans' instincts always questioned, sneered one headline, implying he'd been a diversity checkbox, not a true talent. With accounts frozen and no future in sight, Marcus ended up in a tiny apartment in Roxbury, a predominantly black neighborhood he'd donated to, but never actually set foot in. The walls were cracked, the plumbing unreliable, and the air permanently thick with cigarette smoke and cabbage. Each day, Marcus stared at the peeling ceiling, wondering if this would be the day he gave up. Depression gripped him like a storm, each step heavy, each breath a labor. Then, one bitter January night, snow falling thick, Marcus threw on his last designer coat and wandered through Franklin Park. He stood at the frozen pond, wondering if the cold would be enough. That's when he heard it, the faint scratching of pencil on paper beneath the stone bridge. Curious, he looked under and saw a young girl hunched over a notebook, no older than 10. The black child worked by flashlight, scribbling equations in the margins. She wore mismatched mittens, an oversized coat, and had uneven braids. "You okay?" Marcus asked, startling her. She hugged the notebook tighter. "I'm fine," she replied coolly, with a poise far beyond her years. "Just solving some problems." Marcus sat near her, not too close, too cold for homework. "Where do you live?" She hesitated, then said, "Harbor Light Shelter. Since my grandma died." Her name was Zara Wilson. She explained that the shelter was too noisy, so she came here to think, despite his own collapse. Something in Zara's quiet brilliance stirred something long buried in Marcus's purpose. The next morning, Marcus visited Harbor Light Shelter, former office building now packed with 87 homeless people. The social workers eyed him warily. A sharp-eyed woman named Janet Cooper glared. "What's your interest in her?" Marcus explained the park, the cold, and his concern. "I'd like to help." Barbara Thompson, the White Shelter director, gave him a frosty smile. "We see this a lot, your kind looking out for each other. But good intentions don't feed a child. Your kind." The words burned. Still, with nothing to his name, no house, no standing, Marcus filled out foster paperwork. The process was grueling, laced with veiled racism and outright suspicion. His bankruptcy raised red flags. "Why would a man in your position want this responsibility?" asked a skeptical family court judge through narrow spectacles. Even those who still took his calls were baffled. "You've lost your mind," said Thomas Green, a former friend in finance. "You can't even support yourself, and you're taking in a shelter kid. What is this, some stunt to fix your reputation?" The press latched on quickly. Headlines blared: "Fallen financier's final bet. A homeless girl. Evans seeks redemption in charity move." Another teased: "Whitman, the man who'd orchestrated his destruction, was quoted in the Boston Globe." Marcus always had a flair for the dramatic. One has to wonder what the real motivation is. Here or worse. The suggestion turned Marcus's stomach, but something in Zara's calm persistence lit a fire in him. One no slander could extinguish, against every warning, through every smear. The court approved the foster application. Marcus suspected the truth. No one else had stepped forward to take a difficult older, black girl, and that was all the reason he needed. The overloaded system was all too eager to hand off responsibility, and so, armed with only his resolve and the last shreds of pride, Marcus Evans became the legal guardian of 19-year-old Zara Wilson. Their early days together were marked by tension and silence. Marcus's cramped apartment somehow felt even smaller with Zara there, though she moved like a ghost, quiet, careful, and always observing him with cautious, guarded eyes that had already seen more than most adults. She never fully unpacked her worn backpack, treating her stay as temporary, like she expected to be sent away at any moment. At night, Marcus could hear her breathing shift whenever he passed the couch where she slept, her body instinctively bracing, as though danger might appear at any second. "You're safe here," he told her often, but the words seemed to bounce off a fortress she had built around herself, one he couldn't yet reach. The first breakthrough came 3 weeks later. Marcus woke one night to grab water and noticed the couch was empty. Panic surged until he saw a faint light glowing under the closet door. He opened it slowly and found Zara curled up inside, clutching her notebook and flashlight, surrounded by small stashes of cereal, crackers, and apples. "I'm sorry," she whispered, eyes wide with fear. "I won't take more food." The realization struck Marcus like a punch. This child had been hungry for so long that hiding food had become instinct. "Zara," he said softly, sinking down beside her on the hallway floor, "you don't ever have to hide food here. You can eat whenever you're hungry. This is your home now." The word home made her blink, as if unsure what it meant, but she nodded hesitantly. Together, they returned the food to the kitchen. Marcus labeled a cabinet with masking tape and a Sharpie. "This is the Zara cabinet," he said. "Everything in here is yours, always." That night marked a shift between them, small but real. Trust would come slowly, in fragments. Marcus soon began to notice Zara's survival instincts. She always scoped out exits in any room. She wore multiple layers, even indoors. She washed her few belongings nightly in the bathroom sink. But more astonishing was what she kept in her notebook. It wasn't just homework. She was building advanced mathematical systems beyond anything a fourth grader should even recognize. One night, finding her hunched with her flashlight again, Marcus asked about the equations. She snapped the notebook closed. "It's nothing," she said quickly. "Just stuff I'm figuring out." When he pressed, she became visibly tense. "People take things from me when they know what I can do," she said flatly. "Then they don't want me anymore." The certainty in her voice came from experience, and it broke Marcus's heart. His own struggles deepened. His name in ruins. He couldn't get hired, not even for basic jobs. He applied for dozens of roles: accounting clerk, office assistant, call center rep. Rejections rolled in, each thinly veiled with coded language about his past. At one particularly humiliating interview for a bank teller position, the young white manager, maybe 30, at most, leaned back and asked, "Weren't you one of those diversity hires who couldn't keep up when things got real?" Marcus swallowed the insult. "No, sir. I built my firm from scratch and ran it successfully for 15 years. It was stolen from me." The man smirked. "Well, that's not the story I've heard. We'll be in touch." They never were. To survive, Marcus picked up whatever he could: night janitor shifts, late-night gas station work, weekend moving jobs, anything that paid in cash and skipped the background checks. His body ached, but what cut deeper was knowing it still wasn't enough. He'd gone from private jets to checking bus schedules in less than a year. Meanwhile, Zara faced her own battles. At Jackson Elementary, a mostly white school, she was placed in 4th grade by age, but it was obvious her math skills were light. Years ahead, her homeroom teacher, Ms. Rivera, was kind, but overwhelmed. Mr. Peterson, the math teacher, wasn't so generous. When Zara breezed through a week's assignments in one sitting, he accused her of cheating. "No one just knows the answers," he said loudly in front of the class, "especially not someone from your background." The kids absorbed the prejudice instantly. "Why do you wear the same clothes every day?" one girl asked. "My mom says people from Roxbury are dangerous," whispered another. "Is he real?" "Dad in prison," came a third. Zara ate lunch alone, scraping every crumb from her tray. Within 2 weeks, her perfect work came back marked with C's and D's. "They say I need to show more work," she told Marcus. "They don't believe I do it in my head." Marcus scheduled a meeting, facing Principal Warner and Mr. Peterson. He calmly presented Zara's flawless work and asked for clarity on the grades. "Mr. Evans," the principal began with a syrupy tone, "we know this is new for you, but sometimes kids have to learn that special treatment isn't always helpful." "She got every answer right," Marcus replied. Peterson scoffed. "She can't be doing this in her head. No 4th grader can. She's using something we're not seeing." "You mean," Marcus said slowly, "that she must be cheating because a little black girl from Roxbury can't possibly be this smart?" The silence was sharp. Principal Warner's tone chilled. "Mr. Evans, there's no need for that kind of accusation. Your background doesn't give you the right to claim prejudice every time your ward is asked to meet expectations." Her posture, her tone, her eyes all said it clearly. Marcus was now the angry black man, and therefore dismissible. The meeting ended in vague promises Marcus knew would lead nowhere. That evening, he found Zara sitting on the fire escape, her face wet with tears as she looked up at the night sky. "Why do they hate us before they even know us?" she asked quietly. Marcus sat beside her, momentarily lost for words. How do you explain centuries of racism to a child who just wants to learn? "Some people fear what they don't understand," he said. "And you, Zara Wilson, are hard to understand because you're brilliant." She looked at him, doubtful. "Is that good?" "It's amazing," he said. "But it means we have to be twice as good and work twice as hard. It's not fair, but it's the truth." Zara considered this. "I'm not going to pretend to be less smart anymore. Not for them." Marcus smiled. "Good. I'll be here every step of the way." Their next breakthrough came that weekend. For a science assignment, Zara had to build a solar system model, something she'd never been able to do during her transient schooling. Marcus scraped together what little money he had for supplies. Foam balls, wire, paint dot. They turned their tiny kitchen into a craft studio. Marcus held the planets, while Zara painted with astonishing detail from memory. "Neptune has 13 moons we know about," she said, dabbing dots around the blue orb. "Its winds go over 1,000 miles per hour." Working side by side, a shift occurred. Zara smiled real smiles and confidently corrected Marcus's astronomy facts. By Sunday night, The finished model hung from their ceiling. They stood beneath it, shoulder to shoulder. "We did good," Marcus said, nudging her gently. "Yeah," she whispered, leaning against him. "We did." As winter gave way to spring, Marcus noticed something else. Zara counted everything's steps, receipts, ceiling tiles. She calculated their grocery bill, mid-dial, taxes included. On bus rides, she mumbled equations under her breath. Something inside her mind wasn't just gifted, it was extraordinary. Marcus realized she was calculating fuel efficiency based on passenger load, stops, and total distance. But what truly captured his attention were her notebooks, now filling an entire shelf in their apartment. Page after page was covered with intricate equations, most of them focused on energy, light, and theoretical transfer. One evening, while Marcus stirred a pot of pasta over the stove and Zara worked at the kitchen table under the harsh bulb light, he noticed her scowling as she furiously erased part of an equation. "Stuck on a homework problem?" he asked casually. Zara gave a dry snort. "This isn't homework. Mr. Peterson just started teaching long division." She hesitated, then added, "I'm working on energy transfer, but I can't get the efficiency ratio to balance." Setting down the wooden spoon, Marcus walked over and glanced at her page. What he saw reminded him faintly of advanced physics problems from his university days, but there was something unique here. She was approaching the problem from a completely different angle, unfamiliar, but somehow, elegant. "Where did you learn this?" he asked, carefully, not wanting to trigger her instinct to shut down. Zara shrugged. "I didn't. I just, see it." "See what? Patterns? How energy moves? How it should move," she said, tapping her pencil against a messy formula. "When we turn sunlight into electricity, we lose too much in the process. But I think there's a way to capture more, by using a different semiconductor array that picks up a wider part of the light spectrum." Marcus sat down slowly, all thoughts of dinner forgotten. Zara. "This is real physics, advanced physics." She looked up at him, suddenly unsure. "Is that bad? I don't have books to check if I'm right. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong." Marcus shook his head. "It's not bad, it's just beyond what most adults even understand. But I think I know someone who might help." That night, once Zara was asleep, still refusing the bedroom, preferring to rest on the couch near the door, Marcus made a phone call he'd been avoiding for months. Dr. Elaine Chen, an old friend from his MIT days before he'd left academia for the financial world. One of the few who hadn't fully turned her back after his downfall. "Marcus Evans," she answered, startled. "I thought you dropped off the face of the earth." After a few strained pleasantries, Marcus explained everything about Zara and her strange, remarkable equations. "I know it sounds unbelievable," he finished, "but I've never seen anything like it. She just knows this stuff." Dr. Chen was skeptical, but her curiosity was piqued enough to agree to meet them. On Saturday, Marcus and Zara rode the bus to MIT's campus. As they neared the academic buildings, Zara grew quiet, clutching her notebook tightly. "These are real scientists," she whispered. "What if they laugh at me?" Marcus gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. "Then they're not real scientists. Real ones respect real ideas, no matter where they come from." Dr. Chen welcomed them into her office, polite but observant. Marcus noticed her subtle surprise at Zara's worn clothing and his own faded dress shirt, a far cry from the suits he used to wear when he lectured here. She offered water in paper cups and gestured toward a shelf of textbooks. "Zara might want to look around while we talk, actually," Marcus cut in gently. "Zara's the reason we're here. I'd like her to explain her ideas directly." With a little encouragement, Zara opened her notebook. At first hesitant, she soon found her rhythm, her voice gaining strength as she described her concepts. She waved her hands to illustrate complex relationships. Her language occasionally imprecise, but her meaning clear. Dr. Chen's expression changed from polite attention to full immersion. She began interrupting with technical questions. Zara answered each one, sometimes after a pause to find the right words, but always with confidence. Half an hour in, Dr. Chen excused herself and stepped into the hallway. Marcus overheard her on the phone. "Jaku, need to get down here. Now. Trust me." Within an hour, Zara stood at the center of the office, facing 3 physics professors and a graduate student. They fired questions at her, testing her understanding. Watching her solve equations on the whiteboard with ease. The coefficient needs to shift when factoring for temperature variance, Zara said matter-of-factly, correcting one of their formulas and annotating it without hesitation. Marcus watched from the corner, filled with a pride he hadn't felt in years. Later, when Dr. Chen stepped out again, Marcus followed her into the hallway. "Well?" he asked. Dr. Chen shook her head, almost in disbelief. "I've never seen anything like this." She grasps quantum mechanics with an instinct most grad students don't develop after years of training. Her energy modelites unconventional, but the math holds up. If her projections are right, it could boost solar efficiency by 60 to 70%. Marcus's heart swelled, but her next words chilled him. "Of course," she said, "we'll have to bring this to the university board. There are protocols for working with extraordinary minors. Paperwork, oversight, possibly guardianship. Considerations." She trailed off. Marcus stared at her, suddenly alert. "What exactly are you saying?" Marcus interrupted, his voice edged with suspicion. "Are you saying you want to take her work?" Dr. Chen blinked, as if the answer should have been obvious. With proper oversight and university support, this research could be revolutionary. Naturally, we'd need to assign credit appropriately with the university as the primary institution overseeing development. Marcus felt the familiar burn of rage rising in his chest. "So, take her work," he clarified. "Marcus, be reasonable," Chen replied, her tone softening into condescension. "She's a young black girl from the streets. For anyone to take her seriously in this field, she needs institutional legitimacy. And frankly, given your current ... circumstances, you're in no position to push this forward on your own." As they walked back to the office, Marcus overheard 2 male professors speaking quietly by the water cooler. "Incredible," one said. "If Chen plays this right, she's getting a huge grant. But what about the optics?" asked the other. "We can't have a homeless kid as the public face of a global tech breakthrough. List her as a special contributor in the acknowledgments," the first suggested. "And Evans, he's a walking PR nightmare. We minimize him as much as possible." Marcus's fists clenched involuntarily. Back in the office, he found Zara cornered by an overzealous grad student, pelting her with question after question. She looked overwhelmed as wide, hands twitching, her breath fast and shallow. Marcus stepped in. "I think we're done for today," he said firmly, collecting Zara's notebooks. "But we've only scratched the surface," protested one professor. "There's so much we still need to test. We'll be in touch," Marcus replied coolly, steering Zara toward the door. As they stepped into the cold, Zara slipped her hand into his first. "They were going to take it," she whispered. "Just like you said they would." "Yes," Marcus replied quietly, "but we're not going to let them." On the bus ride home, Zara had her first panic attack. She trembled, tears running silently down her cheeks as she rocked in her seat, trying to breathe. Later, curled on the couch, she finally spoke. "I heard one of them in the hallway," he said. "It's amazing what these urban children can do with proper guidance. Like I'm some animal at a zoo who learned a trick." She looked up, wounded, but defiant. "I don't want them to have my work. It's mine. It's the only thing that's ever really been mine." That night, As they ate boxed macaroni and cheese, Marcus made a decision. The world had already taken everything from him. It wouldn't take what belonged to her. "We're going to build this ourselves," he told her. "I don't know how yet, but I promise you this: your name will be first. Your work will be protected, and no one will exploit you on my watch." Zara studied his face carefully, like it was an equation she needed to solve. "You really mean that?" "With everything I've got," Marcus said. Something shifted between them in that moment: trust, purpose, a fragile but deepening bond that felt closer to family than either of them had known in years. Have you ever seen someone take credit for work that wasn't theirs? Did you speak up or stay silent? Comment one if you've ever had to protect your own or someone else's ideas. Like and subscribe if you believe in defending young talent like Zara from exploitation by powerful institutions. But now that Marcus had committed to helping Zara bring her energy breakthrough to life without backing, without funding, how would they succeed? They had no lab, no formal support. Some nights, they barely had dinner, and the world was already catching wind of Zara's genius. Just a week after their visit to MIT, an article appeared in the university's internal newsletter. It didn't name Herb, but the details were specific, enough that anyone paying attention could put it together. Marcus's fear proved right when a reporter called their apartment. They were writing a human interest story. The resulting piece, published in the Boston Herald Sunday edition, titled "Math Whiz Lives in Roxbury Apartment," painted Zara as more curiosity than innovator. It quoted scientists questioning whether a homeless child could possibly have produced such theories on her own. A sidebar focused on Marcus's financial fall, implying he was using the girl's talent to stage a comeback. Zara read the article silently, then spent the rest of the day tearing through equations, with such intensity that she punctured the paper more than once. The tone of the coverage was frustrating, but it brought attention. 3 days later, Marcus opened their apartment door and froze. Standing there was Richard Whitman, the very man who had engineered Marcus's fall, expensive briefcase in hand, impeccably dressed, and smiling like a man who had already decided how this story would end. "Marcus," he said smoothly, like they were old friends, "may I come in? I think I have a proposal that could benefit us both." Marcus wanted to slam the door, but curiosity got the better of him. Inside, Whitman scanned the modest apartment with polite disdain. Zara glanced up from the kitchen table, immediately sensing the tension. "And this must be the young genius I've heard so much about," Whitman said, approaching with an outstretched hand. Zara didn't take it. She looked at him, then returned to her work in silence. Whitman chuckled. "Focused. I like that." He turned to Marcus. "May we speak privately?" "Anything you have to say," Marcus said, "you can say in front of Zara." Whitman's smile flickered, but only briefly. "Very well," he said. "I'll get straight to the point. My company, Whitman Innovations, is ready to provide full development support for Zara's energy theory. We have the infrastructure, the talent, and the global reach to bring this to market quickly." He opened his briefcase and laid out a glossy folder. "We're offering a generous package, a full scholarship for Zara, valid at any institution she chooses, a housing allowance so you can relocate to better accommodations, and of course, a consulting fee for you." Marcus caught the subtext instantly. "You'll be on the sidelines, not a partner, a footnote." He closed the folder without looking at it, and waited for Zara to speak first. Zara wouldn't be credited as the inventor, just a passing curiosity. Marcus picked up the folder but didn't open it. "And the ownership of her work?" he asked. Richard waved a hand dismissively. "Standard procedure. Whitman Innovations would hold the patents, with proper acknowledgement of Zara's contributions, of course." "What percentage?" Marcus asked, voice flat. Richard hesitated. "These things are negotiable, but typically, when miners are involved in, when significant development is still required, the originating idea might receive 3 to 5% of net profits. Marcus repeated it slowly. 3 to 5%. For what could be the most important energy breakthrough of the decade. Richard leaned in, voice dropping into his most persuasive tone. Let's be realistic. You're in a cramped apartment in Roxbury, working odd jobs to survive. You have no labs, no funding, no team, and your reputation. It's radioactive. What I'm offering is a lifeline. Marcus handed the folder back. We'll consider our options. The mask slipped. Richard's pleasant smile thinned. Don't be foolish, Marcus. You know I can make things happen, and I can make things ... difficult. He glanced toward Zara. The implication clear. It'd be a shame if CPS started getting concerned about the welfare of a foster child in such unstable conditions. The threat hung thick in the air. Zara, who had been quietly pretending not to listen, looked up sharply. Marcus rose, his tone final. I think it's time you left. At the door, Richard gave a parting shot. You've lost everything once, Marcus. Be smart. Don't gamble with what little you've got left. After he was gone, Zara asked quietly, Who was that? Someone who taught me a painful lesson about trusting the wrong people, Marcus said. He's the reason I lost my company. Brows furrowed. He wants to steal my work too, doesn't he? Yes, Marcus said honestly, and he's very good at taking what doesn't belong to him. The threat wasn't idle. 3 days later, Marcus got a call from Child Protective Services. An anonymous complaint had been filed about his fostering arrangement with Zara. A caseworker named Heather Davis would be conducting a home inspection the next day. That night, Marcus scrubbed their apartment top to bottom, aware of how much their modest life could be misconstrued. Zara watched in silence, before quietly asking, They're going to take me away, aren't they? Marcus's heart sank. Not if I can help it, he said, trying to sound confident, though he wasn't. Heather Davis arrived right on time, a woman in her 50s, with steel-gray hair, and a clipboard that seemed welded to her hand. Her inspection was clinical, her conclusions seemingly pre-written. 1 bedroom for 2 people of opposite genders. She asked, jotting something down. I sleep on the couch, Marcus explained. Zara has the bedroom. She raised an eyebrow. And only 1 bathroom. I see. Yes, but we follow a schedule. And we respect each other's privacy. She made no reply, only kept writing. She noted the limited food in the fridge, the absence of a formal study space, the low-income neighborhood. In separate interviews, Marcus tried to stress their emotional bond, the progress Zara had made, but Davis seemed fixated on logistics. Irregular income, neighborhood crime stats, Marcus's history. Later, Marcus would learn the complaint came directly from Richard Whitman's office, raising questions about Marcus's motives, hinting at exploitation, even suggesting their living arrangement might be inappropriate. The judge assigned to their custody hearing was connected to Whitman's campagna. Discovery Marcus made with bitter irony when he spotted the judge's name on a charity gala program while emptying trash on a janitorial shift. A custody hearing was scheduled for the following month. That night, Marcus sat at their kitchen table, long after Zara had gone to bed, trying to piece together any kind of plan. A quiet sound from the living room caught his attention. Zara pretending to sleep, listening. I know you're awake, he said gently. Come sit with me. She padded over, mismatched socks muffling her steps. Her expression was raw, uncertain. I heard Richard's lawyer call today, she said quietly. While you were in the shower, she hesitated. They offered you money, $50,000, if you gave me up. Marcus felt his stomach twist. You weren't supposed to hear that, he said softly. But yes, it's true. And you said no. I did. I always will. Zara looked away. Everyone leaves. My mom left when I was a baby. My grandma died Foster homes always gave me back when I got hard to handle. Why would you be any different? She grabbed her backpack and bolted for the door. Marcus chased her, but she was fast gone before he even reached the street. Panic gripped him as he raced through the darkened streets of Roxbury. He searched everywhere: the community center, the closed library, the park where they first met, even the shelter. He called the police only to be met with apathy. "She's probably fine," the desk sergeant said flatly. "These kids usually turn up these kids." Marcus felt the bile rise in his throat. Then he remembered Zara once mentioned she'd lived near Franklin Cemetery with her grandmother. Acting on instinct, he headed there, hopping the fence under the no trespassing after dark sign. The cemetery was silent, cloaked in mist, but a small light caught his eye, her flashlight. There she was, cross-legged at a modest grave marked Elenina Wilson, beloved grandmother. "She was the only one who didn't think I was weird," Zara murmured as he approached. She said, "My brain was a gift, not a problem." Marcus sat beside her in the wet grass. She was right. The rain came down gently, but neither moved. "I heard what they're saying," Zara said. "That you're using me. That you're trying to get rich again." She looked at him, searching his face. "Is it true?" Marcus held her gaze. "Before I met you, I had nothing. I was ready to end my life. You didn't just give me ideas, Zara, you gave me a reason to live again." His voice trembled. "If they take you away, I'll fight. Not because of your genius, though it's extraordinary, but because you're my family now." Her eyes welled with tears. For the first time, she leaned into him, wrapping her arms around his waist, her face buried in his shoulder. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I don't want to go back into the system." "I know," he said. "I can't promise what the court will decide, but I can promise that I will never stop trying to protect you and your work. We're in this together." They stayed in the cemetery until the rain stopped, then walked home soaked, but bonded in a new, unshakable way. Whatever the world threw at them now, they'd face it together, not as a pair of broken individuals, but as a chosen family. They cleared a corner of the basement and set up makeshift testing stations using salvaged shelving. Jamal helped them reroute some electrical lines and install a high-powered ventilation fan in the window well. With their new space secured, Marcus and Zara settled into a focused routine. Each evening, after school for Zara and work for Marcus, they met at the community center and toiled late into the night. Zara refined her theoretical models, while Marcus, drawing on engineering fundamentals from his college days, translated her ideas into tangible components. They scavenged parts from electronics recycling centers, repurposed everyday items, and only bought what was absolutely essential with their dwindling funds. That scarcity drove innovation. When they couldn't afford specialized chemical containers, Zara discovered that ordinary kitchenware, arranged in specific patterns, could serve as makeshift reaction chambers. Lacking precision measuring instruments, Marcus adapted medical equipment found in secondhand stores to suit their needs. Word of their efforts began to spread through the neighborhood. An electrician offered advice on wiring systems. A high school science teacher donated outdated but usable lab gear. A retired engineer, who usually came to the center to play chess, began dropping by regularly to give feedback on their designs. Late one night, while hauling equipment from a closing electronics store, a police cruiser pulled up beside them. Two white officers stepped out, hands resting near their holsters. "We got reports of suspicious activity," one of them said, eyeing the boxers in their arms. "What's in those?" Marcus calmly explained. They'd legally purchased the items and offered the receipt. The officer gave it a cursory glance. "Looks like a lot of electronics. Where are you taking them?" The interrogation dragged on for 15 tense minutes. The officer's disbelief was obvious with every loaded question. When Marcus mentioned they were building an energy prototype in the basement of the community center, One officer laughed. Right? Let me guess you're inventing something that'll make you rich. Then a radio call came, in another incident involving a black male, 6 feet tall. The vague description could have applied to thousands. Turn around and put your hands on the wall, one officer ordered abruptly. Kid, step away from him. Marcus blinked, confused. What? Why? I said now, the officer barked, drawing his weapon. Marcus obeyed instantly, careful not to escalate the situation. Zara, go stand by the cruiser, he said, trying to sound calm. But she didn't move. She stood frozen in fear as the officer forced Marcus to the wall, knee pressed into his back, while the other rifled through their equipment. It's just computer parts, the second officer finally muttered, almost disappointed. Everything matched the receipt. They were released with a warning to avoid suspicious activity after dark, as if being black and carrying electronics was cause for suspicion. Marcus walked away with scraped hands and a bruised face, but for Zara, the impact ran deeper. That night, she woke up screaming from a nightmare where Marcus had been shot. For the next 3 nights, she refused to sleep, staying up to watch over him, convinced her vigilance could keep him safe. The trauma crept into her work. 2 equations once neat and precise became scattered and chaotic. Her attention wandered. Marcus reassured her as best he could, promising he was fine. But the fear had settled inside her like a parasite. I can't lose you too, she whispered one night when he found her awake at 3 a.m. You're the only one who believes in me. But something unexpected came out of the ordeal. A bystander had recorded the police encounter, and the video spread on local social media. The sight of a man and a child being harassed for carrying legally purchased electronics struck a nerve with many. Curiosity turned into action. A neighborhood watch group began escorting them during supply runs. The community center board voted unanimously to extend their access to the basement indefinitely. And then, a surprising call came from Dr. Elaine Chen at MIT. I saw the video, she said over the phone, her voice tinged with shame. I was horrified, and I've been reflecting on how I handled things when we first met. Her tone was sincere. I'd like to help. No strings attached. No university involvement. No claim on the IP, just my expertise, if you're still open to it. Marcus hesitated, but they needed scientific guidance, and Chen seemed genuinely contrite. They agreed to meet at a neutral spot, a quiet coffee shop, halfway between Roxbury and MIT. Their conversation was honest. Marcus laid out his concerns about exploitation and institutional bias. Dr. Chen acknowledged the long history of academic spaces, co-opting innovations from marginalized communities. They struck a deal. She would act solely as a technical consultant, offering access to lab tools through private channels, and she would make no claims, legally or otherwise, on Zara's intellectual property. With Chen's help, their progress accelerated. Her network provided better equipment. Her knowledge helped Zara refine the most difficult parts of her theory. But perhaps most importantly, her validation helped Zara believe in the importance of her own work. After 47 grueling days in the basement lab, they achieved their first successful energy conversion using Zara's unique method. The prototype was crude, a bundle of wires, altered solar cells, and cobbled together parts, jammed inside a plastic storage bin, but the results were undeniable. The readings showed a conversion efficiency nearly 60% higher than standard commercial systems. The moment the meter spiked, confirming the output, the room erupted in cheers. Jamal, Dr. Chen, and several community members who'd supported them were there to witness it. Zara, usually reserved and stoic, let out a joyful squeal, leaped into the air, and wrapped Marcus in a spontaneous hug. We did it, she beamed. We actually did it. For the first time since losing everything, Marcus felt the heavy weight of failure lift. Together, they'd turned raw talent and grit into something real, something powerful. They hadn't just proven that Zara's theory worked, they had proven that her brilliance, their bond, and their belief in each other were more than enough to change the world. But their success didn't stay secret for long. In the world of energy science, rumors of a major breakthrough spread fast. Despite their efforts to remain discreet, whispers began about a revolutionary solar prototype being developed in an unlikely location, a community center basement in Roxbury. Marcus suspected that Dr. Chen's occasional use of university equipment, despite her best efforts, had raised some flags. And just a few days after their prototype test, Marcus received a phone call from Gerald Hoffman. Gerald Hoffman, Executive Vice President of Sunlight Energy Corporation, one of the largest solar power firms in the country, opened the call with polished charm. "Mr. Evans," he began, "I understand you and your ward have developed something quite intriguing in the renewable energy space. We'd be very interested in exploring acquisition opportunities." Marcus had been expecting this. In his former life, as a venture capitalist, he had made similar calls to young startups with promising ideas. "We're not entertaining acquisition offers at this time," he replied calmly, "but thank you for reaching out." Hoffman's tone cooled ever so slightly. "I strongly encourage you to reconsider. The energy sector is complicated, heavily regulated, filled with patent landmines. A small operation like yours would face tremendous hurdles alone." It wasn't a threat, not overtly, but the message was clear. When Marcus held his ground, Hoffman's voice turned sharp. "We've reviewed Miss Wilson's background, and we're aware of your current legal situation concerning her custody. It would be unfortunate if the court were to question whether your motivations were truly in the child's best interest." 3 days later, Marcus and Zara arrived at the community center to find the basement door pried open and their lab ransacked. The prototype was gone. So were Zara's notebooks filled with her latest equations, refinements, and breakthroughs. Their computer had been stolen, though thankfully they had encrypted backups stored in the cloud. Zara stood frozen at the empty work table. "They took my notebooks," she whispered, hollow and stunned. For a child who had never had much, those notebooks weren't just papers, they were proof of who she was, her mind, her effort, her journey. The police arrived, but their investigation was cursory at best. "Break-ins happen all the time around here," one officer shrugged. "Probably just someone looking to flip electronics for drug money." When Marcus suggested it might be a targeted theft, corporate espionage, the officer actually laughed. "Yeah, okay. A big energy company's worried about a science fair project in a community center basement." The following week delivered another blow. Jamal called Marcus, his voice tight. "The center just got notice our primary grant is under review." Suddenly the foundation's concerned about unauthorized experiments and liability issues. The meaning was obvious. Keep supporting Marcus and Zara, and the center could lose $300,000 in annual funding. Despite Jamal's assurances that he was fighting for them, Marcus couldn't let the community center serving hundreds of local families go down because of them. They packed up what was left and moved their equipment back into the apartment, even as the eviction date loomed closer. Meanwhile, the press, previously disinterested, finally took notice, but not in the way Marcus had hoped. A major tech blog ran a headline: "Custody Battle Raises Concerns Over Exploitation in DIY Science Project." The article relied on unnamed sources, suggesting Marcus was using Zara's talents for financial gain, all while providing subpar living conditions. Richard Whitman was quoted directly, voicing grave concerns about the psychological burden placed on a child being groomed as a prodigy. Worst of all was the way the media portrayed Zara not as a brilliant mind, but as a vulnerable, manipulated child. Other stories followed suit. Headlines like "Urban Youth's Solar Claims Spark Skepticism" circulated online. Journalists referred to Zara as naturally gifted, a common racial trope that downplays intellectual brilliance in favor of attributing black excellence to instinct rather than intellect. Momentum behind the custody case accelerated. The court date was suddenly moved up, allegedly due to urgent welfare concerns. Heather Davis, their assigned social worker, filed a damning updated report. It emphasized Marcus's ongoing financial instability and painted Zara's involvement in the energy project as developmentally inappropriate. There was no mention of their bond, no acknowledgement of Zara's passion for her work. Their court attorney, Sarah Rodriguez, a young, overworked public defender, offered a grim assessment. The judge on your case has a conservative record on family issues. Single men with unstable income. It's a tough sell. The pressure from all directions was taking its toll. During a tense meeting at a local park, Dr. Chen confided, "They're watching me." She explained that someone had accessed her university email, and that both Whitman Innovations and Sunlight Energy were quietly asking around about her recent research interests. One of the grad students who helped us, he got a job, offered a bull the starting salary. The condition: share everything he knows about any new solar conversion tech he's seen. The campaign against them wasn't just strategic. It was deeply personal. Zara, once focused and vibrant, became anxious and withdrawn. Her appetite faded. She struggled to sleep, haunted by nightmares about being taken away or losing Marcus. Her performance at school declined, concentration now impossible under constant emotional weight. Marcus wasn't faring much better. He juggled multiple jobs, tried to reconstruct their stolen prototype, fought a legal battle he couldn't afford, and shielded Zara from the worst of it. Exhaustion carved deep lines into his face. He'd lost nearly 20 pounds. One night, over a dinner of canned soup and crackers, the only food they had left, Zara stared at him silently, then spoke. "Maybe we should just take the deal," she said softly. Whitman Innovations called. Again, they said if we hand over the technology, they'll drop the custody case and make sure we have enough money to live comfortably. The fact that Whitman Innovations had bypassed him entirely and contacted Zara directly enraged Marcus, but he kept his voice calm. "Is that what you want?" he asked gently. Zara didn't look up. She moved her spoon in slow circles through her soup, eyes downcast. "I want us to stay together," she murmured. "I want you to not look so tired all the time. I want," her voice broke, "I want things to not be so hard anymore." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand, small and trembling, in his. "Zara, look at me." She lifted her eyes reluctantly. "What we've built together, this isn't just about clean energy or fancy tech. It's about proving that real innovation doesn't only come from elite universities or billion-dollar labs. It can come from a kid in a shelter and a man who lost everything if they believe in each other. It's about showing the world that our voices matter too." He squeezed her hand. "If we give up now, we're not just handing over the technology, we're surrendering the story. The story of who gets to invent, of whose ideas are allowed to count." Zara stared at him for a long moment, then gave a small but determined nod. "Okay, we keep fighting." That quiet commitment rekindled Marcus's strength. Whatever came next, they'd face it together, to outsiders, united against a system built to exclude them. Have you ever gone up against powerful institutions just to do what's right? How far would you go to protect a child's future? Type 1 in the comments if you believe in backing young innovators from underrepresented communities. Like if you believe Marcus is right to keep fighting for Zara's rightful recognition as a brilliant inventor. Subscribe to follow their journey as they head into a pivotal courtroom battle where, not only Zara's future, but her revolutionary discovery hangs in the balance. Courtroom 304 was smaller and more clinical than Marcus had imagined. No stately wood paneling or sweeping arches, just beige walls, flickering fluorescent lights, and stiff benches that seemed designed to make every minute feel longer. Marcus sat beside Sarah Rodriguez, his overworked but determined public defender. Across the aisle sat a polished trio of state attorneys from the Department of Children and Families, sorting documents with quiet efficiency. Zara wasn't present. Minors weren't required to attend until called to testify, but she was nearby, waiting with a court-appointed guardian. When Judge Raymond Phillips entered, his expression gave nothing away. A white man in his 60s with thinning gray hair and a reputation for conservative views on family structures. He opened the file before him without looking up. "Wilson custody matter," he said flatly. "I understand there are serious concerns regarding the current fostering arrangement." Victoria Bennett, lead counsel for the state, stood immediately. "Yes, Your Honor, we intend to demonstrate that Mr. Evans is unfit to serve as foster parent to Zara Wilson. We will provide evidence of financial hardship, substandard living conditions, and most concerning a pattern of exploiting the child's intellectual abilities for personal financial gain." Marcus clenched his jaw, but kept his expression neutral. Sarah had warned him any display of anger would only feed into racial stereotypes and damage their case. The state's parade of witnesses began. Richard Whitman took the stand first. Every inch the corporate executive in a tailored suit worth more than Marcus's monthly income. "Marcus has always been motivated by profit," he said smoothly. "After losing his company, he was desperate for a new opportunity. I believe he sees this child not as someone to care for, but as a startup to develop." Sarah objected to the speculative nature of his comments, but the damage was done. The judge nodded slightly, as if the narrative made sense. Heather Davis, the social worker, testified next. Her report focused on the cramped apartment, Marcus's irregular employment, and what she termed an inappropriate level of responsibility placed on Zara. "Children need structure," she said firmly. "They need clear boundaries between adult work and childhood development. Mr. Evans, however well-intentioned, cannot provide those basics." Throughout her testimony, she referred to Zara impersonally as the child. It stung every time Marcus heard it. Then came Catherine, his ex, the last person Marcus expected to see. Elegantly dressed and composed. She never looked in his direction. Marcus was always obsessed with success, she testified. "Even during our marriage, everything came second to his ambition. I doubt that's changed." When asked if she thought he was exploiting Zara, she paused just long enough for effect. "I think Marcus sees opportunity where others see people. You can draw your own conclusions." By the time the court broke for lunch, Marcus felt hollowed out. None of the testimony reflected the life he and Zara had actually built, nights studying together. Her laughter as he braided her hair, the way she rested her head on his shoulder during quiet moments. It felt like they were trying to erase all of it. But when they stepped outside, a powerful sight met them. More than 30 neighbors had gathered, holding signs. "Let Zara stay with Marcus, support Black inventors, Zara's work, Zara's rights." Jamal Washington stood among them, organizing the peaceful show of solidarity. "We couldn't let you go through this alone," he told Marcus. "Everyone here knows the truth." The gesture lifted Marcus's spirits, but Sarah pulled him aside. "Judge Phillips won't be moved by public rallies," she cautioned. "If anything, he might see it as outside pressure on the court. We need to win this with testimony." That afternoon, Sarah called Dr. Ella Chen as their first witness. Victoria Bennett objected. She has no direct involvement with the fostering arrangement. Her testimony is irrelevant. But Sarah pushed back. Dr. Chen has spent months working with Marcus and Zara. She can speak directly to their dynamic and to Mr. Evans's role in nurturing Zara's development. After a moment's thought, Judge Phillips allowed it. Dr. Chen's words were calm but powerful. "What I've witnessed is something rare," she said. "Marcus never pressures Zara. He creates space for her talents to grow. He protects her interests even when it means turning down lucrative offers. He doesn't seek credit, he insists Zara be acknowledged as the inventor. During cross-examination, when Victoria implied Dr. Chen was being manipulated, the professor's tone sharpened. I've spent 23 years in academia. I've seen exploitation of gifted children. This is the opposite. If Mr. Evans wanted to profit, he had every chance to sell the technology without crediting Zara. He refused. That speaks volumes. Then came the moment Marcus both feared and hoped for. Zara was called to testify. Judge Phillips looked uneasy, but allowed it. Zara entered, in her best clothes, neatly pressed. She looked small in the imposing room, but walked with quiet dignity. She sat, feet dangling from the chair, posture upright. Now, Zara, the judge asked patronizingly, do you know the difference between the truth and a lie? She blinked. Yes, Your Honor. The truth is a statement that matches reality. A lie is a deliberate misstatement of fact. The room fell still. The judge looked slightly startled. Victoria tried to poke holes. Did Marcus make her work long hours? Did she miss out on childhood? Did she feel pressured? Zara answered calmly. Double quotes. No. Marcus never makes me work. I used to do this in shelters, on scraps of paper. He's the first person since my grandma who understands why it matters to me. On living conditions, I've lived on the street, in places where there was no food or heat. Our apartment may be small, but it's safe. It's home. Then the judge asked the most important question. Why do you want to stay with Marcus? Why not live with a traditional family that could offer more? Zara took her time, then said, before Marcus, people saw me as either a problem or a project. Foster homes tried to fix me. Teachers wanted to skip me ahead or hold me back. No one just saw me. She reached into her pocket and unfolded a piece of paper. This is what we're working on. It's not just science, it's a way to make clean energy accessible to people like us. Marcus could have sold it, but he didn't. He's helping me build it. For us. For our community. She handed the paper to the judge, who frowned at the complex equations. Young lady, he said slowly, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this courtroom is not equipped to evaluate scientific innovation, Judge Phillips said evenly. We're here to determine what arrangement serves the child's best interest in terms of custody. Zara's response was immediate and sharper than anyone expected. My best interest, she said firmly, is to live with someone who believes in me. Someone who stays up late helping me solve problems instead of telling me to act normal. Someone who teaches me that my brain isn't broken, it's a gift, not a disorder to be controlled. She locked eyes with the judge. I've been in the system. I know what happens to kids like Mitha, ones who don't fit the mold. We get medicated, isolated, taught to shrink ourselves just so adults can feel comfortable. A murmur rippled through the courtroom at her eloquence and clarity. But Judge Phillips's expression remained unreadable. After a short recess, he returned with his ruling. While I do not doubt there is a bond between Mr. Evans and Miss Wilson, he began, I must prioritize long-term stability and traditional developmental benchmarks. Therefore, I am placing Zara in the temporary custody of the Department of Children and Families until a more suitable permanent arrangement is found. He continued, listing visitation allowances and periodic reviews, but Marcus heard none of it. His mind was a blur of disbelief and anguish. Across the courtroom, Zara's composure finally cracked. As officers moved to escort her out, she broke free and rushed to Marcus, throwing her arms around him. Don't let them take me, she whispered fiercely, tears streaming down her face. We're not done yet. As she was pulled away, she slipped something small into his hand, a folded piece of paper. She kept her eyes on him until the door shut behind her. Outside, supporters from the community voiced their outrage. Some offered to help file an appeal. Others even whispered about hiding Zara from the authorities. But Marcus, heartbroken but resolute, shook his head. I can't put her through that, he said quietly. "We have to win this the right way, even if it's harder." Only after returning to the apartment did Marcus unfold the note Zara had pressed into his palm. Expecting one of her equations, he was surprised to find an alphanumeric code and a set of instructions. It led to a hidden cloud storage account created by Zara on her own. The final line of the note read, "They can't take what they can't find." Inside the account was everything: backups of her research, step-by-step notes on the prototype's construction, and most critically, video logs. Zara had secretly recorded their process using the laptop's webcam, capturing hours of footage, in which she explained her concepts and built each iteration. One folder, labeled Contingency, stunned Marcus. It contained refined equations, alternative designs, and a complete rebuild plans. Zara had been quietly preparing for this kind of outcome all along. Armed with proof of ownership, Marcus went back to work. During the day, he used his court-approved visits to see Zara, always under supervision. They kept their conversations light, aware they were being monitored. But Zara embedded coded messages in math puzzles, numerical patterns they'd devised together that told him what he needed to know: her foster placement, safe contacts, and insights for the redesign. At night, Marcus worked tirelessly, pouring himself into rebuilding the prototype using Zara's improved specifications. The eviction process delayed due to public pressure bought him just enough time. The community continued to rally. Jamal organized protests outside the courthouse and child welfare offices. Dr. Chen quietly funneled equipment through private contacts. Neighbors brought Marcus's food and supplies, recognizing his relentless devotion. The biggest surprise came from Sarah Rodriguez. Despite her overloaded caseload, she started working unpaid hours to strengthen their appeal. She dug into legal precedents, filed motions, and uncovered a shocking detail. Judge Phillips had undisclosed financial ties to Richard Whitman joint investments that presented a clear conflict of interest. 3 weeks after the custody ruling, an unmarked package arrived. Inside was a USB drive and a single note: "For justice." The drive contained secretly recorded conversations between Whitman and various officials, including Heather Davis. In one clip, Davis and Whitman discussed how to craft a narrative that would ensure Zara's removal. In another, Whitman spoke with Gerald Hoffman of Sunlight Energy. "Once the girl is in state custody," Whitman said, "we'll acquire the rights, Isley. The Guardian will have legal control over her IP. We'll throw in a scholarship fund that looks generous but costs next to nothing compared to what the tech's worth." Hoffman responded coolly, "Perfect. Either we bury it to protect existing markets, or we slow roll it to maximize returns. Either way, the Evans problem disappears." Sarah had the audio files authenticated by a third-party forensic expert. While the recordings might not be admissible in court due to consent laws, they gave her grounds to launch broader legal action. She filed motions alleging judicial misconduct, corporate collusion, and a conspiracy to exploit a child's intellectual property. The claims triggered an ethics investigation and a formal review by the state Attorney General. With the custody case suspended pending inquiry, Marcus turned all his attention to completing the prototype, and 47 days after losing Zara, he succeeded. The new prototype was elegant, robust, and fully operational, producing solar energy at a staggering 70% efficiency. It outperformed current commercial models by a wide margin and could be built using existing manufacturing infrastructure. This wasn't just a prototype, it was a revolution. Marcus contacted a respected science journalist known for covering disruptive technologies with nuance. After signing NDAs, the journalist and a team of independent experts visited Marcus to verify the results. Their stunned reactions, captured on video, left no room for doubt. The technology was real, the data was solid, the implications were enormous. Rather than continue hiding, Marcus made a bold decision. He scheduled a press conference at the Roxbury Community Center, the place where it all began. Jamal opened the event. Cameras rolled. Reporters from major outlets crowded the room. Then Marcus stepped forward. "What I'm about to show you isn't just a scientific breakthrough," he said. "It's a challenge to everything we think we know about innovation, about where genius lives, and about who gets to be seen." He told the full story: Zara's childhood, her brilliance, the unjust custody battle, the attempts to silence and exploit her. Then, he unveiled the prototype. It worked flawlessly. The efficiency readouts stunned the room. "This was designed by a 12-year-old girl," Marcus declared. "A girl the system failed repeatedly. A girl dismissed because she didn't come from wealth, because she's black, because her ideas were too big for the boxes we like to put children in." He held up Zara's patent application, filed in her name. "She will hold the rights, and a major share of future revenues will fund STEM education for girls like her brilliant minds waiting to be believed in." The room erupted in applause. Video clips of his speech spread like wildfire. Social media exploded with support, praise, and outrage at the injustice. Zara's name was trending within hours, and for the first time, the world wasn't doubting her. They were listening. Public opinion, once divided during the heated custody case, began to shift rapidly. The story of a homeless girl and her determined guardian standing up against powerful corporations resonated with millions. The narrative of David versus Goliath captured hearts across the nation. The timing couldn't have been better. The very next day, the Judicial Ethics Committee released preliminary findings, citing serious concerns about Judge Phillips's conduct and undisclosed financial ties to parties with vested interests in the case. Simultaneously, the State Attorney General's office issued subpoenas to both Whitman Innovations and Sunlight Energy, launching a formal investigation into allegations of corporate conspiracy and public corruption. With the mounting scrutiny, the family court had no choice but to reopen the custody case, this time with a new judge. Heather Davis was removed as caseworker after evidence surfaced, suggesting bias and possible misconduct. A new social worker conducted a thorough reassessment, one that focused not just on material stability but on emotional connection and personal development. Community members lined up to offer testimonials on Marcus's dedication and character. Dr. Chen submitted a detailed report attesting to the healthy and deeply supportive relationship she had witnessed between Marcus and Zara. The most impactful statement came from Zara's temporary foster parents, a middle-aged couple who had initially hoped to adopt her. "In the 7 weeks Zara has been with us," they wrote, "she's talked about Marcus every single day. It's clear she's already found her person, her advocate, her family. While we would have been honored to parent her, we believe she already has the parent she needs." Their willingness to prioritize Zara's well-being over their own hopes made a powerful impression. The newly assigned judge, the Honorable Sophia Washington, had a reputation for evaluating a child's best interest through a broader, more human lens. After reviewing the new evidence, she called an emergency hearing. "This court is deeply troubled by the irregularities in the prior proceedings," she began. "Today, we are starting over with open eyes and no assumptions. The focus is solely on what best serves Zara Wilson." Unlike the previous hearing, this time Zara's voice took center stage. Judge Washington addressed her with respect and seriousness, recognizing her intelligence and autonomy. "Zara," she asked, in your own words, "where do you feel most safe, most supported, and most able to grow?" Without hesitation, Zara answered with Marcus. "He is the only person who sees me, all of me, not just my mind, or potential, or issues. He protects every part of who I am." When questioned about their scientific collaboration, Zara explained clearly and passionately how Marcus had always insisted she receive full credit, shielded her from exploitation, and valued her ideas not for their profitability, but for their potential to uplift others. He could have taken my work and gotten rich again, she said simply. Instead, he worked 3 jobs and barely slept just to help me build something that could help people like us. That's not exploitation. That's love. At the conclusion of the hearing, Judge Washington delivered her ruling. The goal of our foster care system is not to place children in flawless homes with perfect finances, she stated. It is to place them in homes where they are safe, cherished, and empowered to become their full selves. The evidence presented today leaves no doubt that Marcus Evans provides exactly that environment for Zara Wilson. She granted Marcus full legal guardianship with a clear path toward adoption should they choose it. Applause erupted throughout the courtroom. Zara ran into Marcus's arms, their tearful embrace capturing the moment's overwhelming emotion. News cameras caught it. To a vivid, human symbol of justice, finally served. In the weeks that followed, Marcus and Zara began rebuilding their lives with firmer footing, and watched as the web of corporate corruption unraveled. Richard Whitman faced federal charges for corruption, bribery, and attempted intellectual property theft. Gerald Hoffman resigned from Sunlight Energy in disgrace. Judge Phillips was officially removed from the bench, pending a full investigation. Meanwhile, Zara's patent application advanced quickly, naming her as the primary inventor, with Marcus listed as a secondary contributor. Multiple companies came forward with legitimate licensing offers, and for the first time since Marcus' financial collapse, real income began to flow in. But instead of hoarding their profits, Marcus and Zara created something larger, the Wilson Evans Foundation. Its mission was threefold: bring their affordable, high-efficiency solar technology to underserved communities, support young innovators from marginalized backgrounds, reform broken systems from foster care to intellectual property law. Their prototype became the cornerstone of a new solar movement. The first full-scale installation was completed at the Roxbury Community Center, providing free electricity and cutting operational costs dramatically. Soon after, their systems were installed in homeless shelters, inner-city schools, and public clinics, changing lives in real time. As Zara's story spread, she received invitations to speak at universities, STEM summits, and tech conventions. At first, she hesitated, uncomfortable with the spotlight. But over time, she came to see the importance of her voice, especially for other young girls of color in science. Everywhere she spoke, Marcus stood beside her. She insisted on it. He believed in me before anyone else, she would tell audiences. He made this possible. Their once controversial case became a teaching example in child welfare and tech ethics seminars. Social workers began citing it as proof of why rigid criteria can't always determine the best home for a child. Even Heather Davis, now removed from her role, issued a public apology. "I let bias cloud my professional judgment," she admitted, "and I failed a child who deserved better." But for Marcus and Zara, the true victory wasn't in the headlines or the courtroom wins. It was in the quiet, everyday moments of their new life. Their apartment was still modest, but now located in a safer neighborhood. Zara had her own bedroom, her own desk, a whiteboard for ideas, a shelf for her growing collection of books, puzzles, and gadgets. It was a home built not of wealth, but of stability, trust, and respect. On a warm September morning, Marcus and Zara stood on the courthouse steps, surrounded by the community that had carried them through. The adoption hearing had been brief, but deeply moving. Judge Washington stepped outside to greet them, shaking Marcus's hand. "In 23 years on the bench," she said softly, "few cases have meant as much to me as this one. You've both shown extraordinary courage." Zara, now 13, stood proudly in a blue dress. She had grown taller, stronger, and more radiant with confidence. The transformation in her posture, her presence, and especially her smile, was undeniable. Marcus slipped an arm round her shoulders as cameras flashed. Sometimes, Even he couldn't believe how far they'd come from a park bench to this. From ruin and rejection, to family, to invention, to legacy. Together, they had proven that genius knows no class, no zip code, no race, and that love, when chosen and fought for, can change everything. Richard Whitman ultimately faced multiple federal charges and a series of civil lawsuits. He accepted a plea deal that included substantial financial penalties. Ironically, a portion of those funds were redirected to support the very kind of young innovators he once sought to exploit. Zara's energy technology had not only met, but exceeded their most optimistic expectations. After rigorous testing and certification, it was licensed to several manufacturers under agreements that prioritized accessibility and equity over profit. Implementation was focused on regions with poor energy infrastructure, including underserved communities in developed nations. At first, this socially driven model confounded energy executives accustomed to profit-first approaches, but the impact was undeniable. Communities long trapped in energy poverty experienced transformative change. Schools could now operate fully, boosting attendance and learning outcomes. Local economies grew, supported by consistent electricity access. Families could finally refrigerate food, charge devices, and light their homes safely. Zara's personal life transformed too. Thanks to the media attention, she received offers from several prestigious academic institutions. Ultimately, she and Marcus chose a progressive school with a personalized curriculum that allowed her to pursue STEM at her own pace while remaining socially connected with peers. The school even created a program built around her abilities, with firm protections in place to ensure her emotional health was always as valued as her intellect. Later that day, they walked together past a newly completed mural on the side of the Roxbury Community Center. It depicted their full journey from Zara solving equations beneath a bridge, to their courtroom victory, and finally to solar panels illuminating a diverse and thriving community. The artist had painted with care and nuance, avoiding the sensationalism that had marred early media portrayals. At the foundation, Jamal Washington organized a gathering that emphasized impact over celebration. Instead of balloons or fanfare, they displayed photographs of community solar installation letters from children who benefited from their educational programs, prototypes from other young inventors. They now supported Dr. Chen attended as well, not as an MIT professor, but as a formal advisor to the Wilson Evans Foundation. She had since become a vocal advocate for change, using their story to challenge institutional racism and exploitation in academia. Standing slightly apart from the crowd, Zara leaned close to Marcus and pulled a page from her ever-present notebook. "I've been thinking about something new," she said, her eyes serious. She showed him a set of equations, an adaptation of her original energy conversion principle. This could revolutionize transportation. Electric vehicles still struggle with range and charging time. This new configuration could double their efficiency while reducing battery size. Marcus studied the page, now familiar enough with her work to recognize the brilliance, even if he didn't grasp every theoretical nuance. "This might be bigger than the first breakthrough," he murmured. Zara nodded. "But this time, I want to do it differently. From the start, open source the core, set up development collectives in communities like ours. Spread the benefits instead of consolidating them." She looked up at him. "I've been thinking about what you said that night when I wanted to give up. That this isn't just about technology, it's about who gets to invent it. I want to change that equation too." Marcus smiled. His pride had nothing to do with her formulas. "It's time," he said. "The world wasn't ready for us before. Let's make sure they are now." Together, they stepped back into the celebration, not as a disgraced financier and a homeless girl, but as father and daughter, as innovators, as advocates, as living proof that brilliance, love, and second chances can come from the most unexpected places. Their story had grown beyond them, It had become a blueprint for systemic change, a challenge to the structures that dismiss talent based on class, race, or conformity, a new equation for possibility, one whose solutions would unfold for generations. Have you ever witnessed someone overcome impossible odds to achieve something extraordinary? What biases still hold us back from recognizing genius in unexpected places? Comment below to share your thoughts on Marcus and Zara's journey. If their story moved you, like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to remember that genius is everywhere, justice is possible, and sometimes all it takes is one person who truly sees you. Thank you for joining us for the equation of hope. Until next time, keep believing in the power of unexpected connections to change the world.